a team that really did struggle this weekend, it was overall a disaster for Mercedes, as George Russell considers it one of the worst race weekends of his time in Mercedes. What even happened is the question. Even with some strong qualifying for George Russell to figure out a start at P3, falling all the way down to a P7 finish, some of the first upgrades of the season for Mercedes, yet it still succumbed to its biggest weakness of the year, something they've been struggling with more or less over the course of going back to the later parts of last season, excess tire wear and degradation. Again, George Russell missing out on the top 5 for the first time in a while. The higher temperatures being a big focusing point as far as the performance of this Mercedes this year, as the Mercedes performed well last year in lower temperatures, lower climates. If it's a little bit warmer, you can more or less count Mercedes out from one of those top steps. They've had some strong performances thus far this season, but they had issues all over the place. Kimi Antonelli, the rookie, his home race power unit basically failing underneath him, forcing the rookie his first did not finish of his career, the first DNF at his home race. Post-race, Kimi even detailing how the power was inconsistent following the virtual safety car pit, which seemed evident in the challenge of holding off Lewis Hamilton, and then just stopped. Straight up stopped, prompting an official full safety car. Overall, super challenging weekend for Mercedes on a couple of different fronts. And why? Why exactly? And I mentioned a little bit ago, the overall main culprit of their struggles being the tire degradation. They still just can't quite figure it out. McLaren are leading the field on tire deg. Max Verstappen knows how to treat those tires. He can handle tire deg. Ferrari seem to at least have the tire deg figured out a little bit here nor there, inconsistently, but a little bit here nor there. But Mercedes, that's just been their biggest culprit. That's been the biggest thing that stopped them from taking those top steps, from really fighting with the McLarens, and something I have to imagine that they were trying to upgrade between Imola and the rest of their upgrade package coming through in Canada, even in circuits that seem to fit the characteristics of the Mercedes this season in a place like a Jeddah. It's just not quite coming together for the Brackley unit. Excuse me. And it's degrading tires so aggressively that they're missing out on fighting at the front overall with both Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, as well as Max Verstappen. In terms of the engine failure for Kimi Antonelli, a lot of questions as to why that happened. I haven't seen a lot of literature exactly on what happened as far as the components, but nonetheless, the car on broadcast, you could hear going around the parabolica, through the second chicane on those high-speed chicane sequences, basically just shutting down before that final turn up the hill, and he parked it exactly where Esteban Ocon did in the Haas. So there's a lot of questions exactly as to what happened there. It seemed, if I'm not mistaken, they had just put brand new power units into the Mercedes in Miami as well. So for them to have an engine failure and having to go through a second power unit this early in the season might be something that rears its ugly head a lot later down the line when they're trying to race for crucial Constructors' Championship points. If they are able to upgrade this car and get it within a certain window, points are going to be oh so valuable down the road. If they're taking grid penalties because of an engine failure, because of engine losses, it's not very good either. And just really bad timing as far as the young Italian's concerned. His home race, I'm sure that he imagined going a lot better. He was fighting pretty well with Lewis Hamilton up until that point, but it seemed like the performance was just starting to slip away. And unfortunate weekend for Kimi Antonelli. So the question really is now, what is exactly next for Mercedes? What are they going to be able to look forward to in the coming races? Well, the first upgrades we got a chance to see anyway, to answer the question really is just more upgrades. The first upgrades we got a chance to see for Mercedes were these front end suspension components here. We're seeing a little bit of this nice little feature. I think that also directs airflow back in such a ways. This is what they had prior to Imola, their new suspension feature here. We also got a chance to see this front wing, the new front wing ahead of Spain. So it looks like Mercedes getting as much data as possible over that past weekend in Imola and this upcoming weekend in Monaco, trying to get as much data as possible because that way they can translate it to a floor upgrade that, if I'm not mistaken, is coming in Barcelona. So Mercedes having a few more things coming down the pipeline. I imagine maybe some more rear wing components maybe coming in Canada. And they also had an opportunity to change out their engine cover towards the back end, a little bit more of a sleek Coke bottle sort of figure as far as the rear engine cover is concerned as well. So they've made some big changes, and they are moving in a direction at least they feel very comfortable in. But at the end of it all, I think the big question is going to be for Mercedes, can they figure out this tire degradation? And it's also worth, again, keeping in mind, Spain, new technical directives are going to be coming in. Flexi wings are going into effect, or non-flexi wings, I guess is a better way of putting it, that are definitely going to change things as far as the performance is concerned up the field with McLaren. Red Bull, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, at least they seem a little bit more prepared for it. Mercedes accounting for it as well, and their willingness to upgrade the car this year. It might just be the question on how far they go in this championship in the 2025 season. Also knowing that throughout the rest of the year, they're putting a lot more resources into reinforcing what they feel is probably a engine or / power unit advantage going into 2026. The conversations going into 2026, them having a really strong power unit. The caveat being that maybe 2025 just might not be as strong. I still feel like this team with the right upgrades within the right operating window could grab the top step once or twice this year, but it might not be a little bit until later, until we get some night races on the calendar. A place like Vegas last year where they performed so well to grab a monster win, but not able to replicate that performance. Overall, it seems like Mercedes are relying on the setup window to narrow the gap beyond the upgrades. And at the end of it all, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see what happens. If these upgrades take, how far ahead can they really go? I still consider them the second best car overall, but it seems like their operating window is a little bit more narrow than their competitors, and that's certainly limiting things.